you can say that it was food for thought. I think we've been served up a feast, and it was great to hear from 3 great cities, genuinely, all with kind of innovative approaches. A lot of things I think that we can learn from their approaches here in Liverpool, but also a lot of things that I think they can learn from us as well. And I think it's really important we continue to have that kind of dialogue and debate, and actually kind of test things out in different areas and see what might be appropriate for us and what might be appropriate for them as well. I suppose if I give a few kind of thoughts on what was said, and you'll forgive me, I do it in kind of chronological order. Chris's presentation from Nottingham. Nottingham's one of my favourite transport cities in the country. I think it's a fantastic local authority who's been able to achieve a hell of a lot. I think it's lucky and it's blessed in the sense that it's got not quite what I call the Holy Trinity, but certainly 3 key ingredients for improving its local transport network, and obviously the livability of its city. One is that it's got control of its rail network, albeit light rail in terms of its tram network, and that's developing, has been very, very popular, and has been a key part of Nottingham's regeneration. It's also got a revenue stream in terms of the fact that by taking a very bold decision to look at workplace parking levy, they've been able to actually generate revenue locally that they can invest locally in important projects, particularly with regard to transport. And I know taking those bold decisions aren't easy, but certainly is paying off in dividends. Chris made the point about the fact that the main bus operator remains in public ownership. I don't think that's alone the key ingredient why it's so successful. I think actually the key reason why Nottingham City Transport as a bus company is so successful is it knows its passengers very well, and it actually goes to a lot of trouble to make sure it looks after its passengers. And that's not only the case with Nottingham's bus company, but also the other main operator in the city. So I think that's been able to be a key sort of benefit for the city. When I kind of compare that and overlay the tracing paper to Liverpool, I think we were in a similar position actually with some things. We've obviously got local control over the Merseyrail network, and that's been a great success since we've been able to do that. We're also trying to do something similar with regards to the other half of our local rail network with Northern Rail through the process called Rail North, involving all of those authorities across the north of England. We also have a local revenue stream, one that can be challenging at times, but that comes in the form of the Mersey Tunnel tolls, and that does generate significant revenue for us on an annual basis that we're able to reinvest back into the transport network, particularly some of the things we've been spending on recently have been park and ride sites. We're not blessed with perhaps as dynamic a set of local bus operators, but I think from my perspective, and it was something that other people touched on as well, when we think about some of the things that should be devolved to a more local level, the same kind of powers over buses that London currently enjoys, I think really would be one of the key jigsaw pieces that we need to see about how we could craft a better transport network that genuinely integrates and actually is more attractive to passengers and provides a much better kind of prospect for the travelling public. So a lot of things that we can learn from Nottingham, and also a lot I hope that they can sort of compare themselves to us in terms of those benefits as well. Alistair from Bristol, I thought it was fantastic to hear about a lot of the vision that lies behind Bristol in terms of equity and developing a more equal city where it doesn't matter where you live, but actually you've got the same opportunities and the same outcomes and opportunities to enjoy the city and your life. And also focusing on improvements in air quality. It's great to see when there is that kind of practical and sort of long-term vision. I also think it's really impressive because a lot of Alistair's focus was on cycling, about some of the things that have been achieved in Bristol. This might seem a little bit kind of trite to say, but I'm particularly impressed because Bristol's quite a hilly city, and to get some of the increases in cycling that they've achieved with the sort of topography that they've got is no mean feat. So I think there's some great things that we can learn from there, particularly by adopting a vision and some high targets accordingly. I think there's a lot of things that we can sort of also add to that debate. One of the things that's been very successful here in Merseyside is our bikeability programme, which is the largest in the country, which really is about focusing on young people at an early age, getting them the cycle training they need to be lifetime cyclists. And it's been so successful that we've also started to roll that out to other groups, particularly families, trying to kind of embed cycling as a real way of getting around. There was lots of talk about infrastructure, both in Alistair's presentation and Bruce's as well. I perhaps take, whilst I don't sort of disregard the importance of that, I think there's also a variety of other ways that you can do it quite cost effectively with the current sort of environment that we've got. As someone who does cycle, one of the things that I've found a real practical benefit is some of the network maps we've got for Merseyside, and those have helped myself cycle around our city along kind of back streets, which are much more enjoyable than trying to ride on main roads, and to be frank about it, much cheaper to kind of institute than sort of doing large infrastructure schemes. So I think there's ways in which we can potentially signpost our local network better as a way of encouraging that. But I think we've got some routes in and out of the city which aren't bad for us to use as a way of encouraging that. Another kind of idea that I would sort of float that I think is really important when we think about cycling is not just about some of the kind of visible cycling infrastructure, but some of the kind of support facilities. One of the things that is often a kind of anomaly, I think, is when you look at planning applications, all of those have to currently factor in cycle parking, and it's exactly right that they do that. I actually think we should also start to think about, for commercial properties, including shower facilities. One of the key reasons I started riding my bike is when they installed a shower at my place of work. And I think if we were serious about getting people cycling, and actually putting the facilities in to allow people to freshen up, would be a really good way to take that forward. It was also great to hear about some of those kind of ideas about improving gateways from railway stations. As someone who in a previous life used to manage Lime Street Station, having seen how horrendous the kind of exit from the station used to be and how that's improved, but how I think it can improve further, and hopefully with a variety of things that we're doing in the city, gives a good opportunity to actually make that an even greater entrance and gateway to our city. I think is another sort of good thing we should be focusing on. It's interesting to hear about the ideas from Nottingham and Bristol accordingly. And just to finish, just touching on Bruce's presentation, delighted to hear Bruce talk about transport being not an end in itself, but actually a means. Because whilst as a transport person, I love to see buses and trains running about, actually that's not what it's all about. It's about what an efficient, effective transport network can bring to a local area. If people can get around in the most seamless of ways, that actually gives us a much greater vitality as a city, and actually kind of improves all our communities and helps support all of our people locally, and not least actually helps support the local economy as well. So it was great to hear that. I was also really pleased to see Bruce, as a kindred spirit, pointing out some of those kind of elephants in the room. I think it's great to hear him say that Boris Johnson's a disappointment. I would agree 100% with that. Particularly in the sense, I'm not trying to be overly political, in the sense that he followed Ken Livingstone, who in my opinion was one of the best visionary civic leaders, and particularly one of the best transport politicians that I think we've seen in the past few decades. So Boris is a disappointment. It's great that he pointed out about some of the challenges with regard to Transport for London. Two of the kind of vanity projects that were kind of pointed out, cable cars and buses, are ones that I also compare. I also mention about the 200 members of staff who were on £100,000 or more on TfL's payroll. And the reason I raise those kind of points is I don't think the TfL examples are very helpful to other city regions like our own that would like to get a greater budget, but crucially greater powers over transport, similar to that TfL enjoys, because quite often I find DfT civil servants and national politicians who sometimes are reticent to giving us greater opportunities, because they think if they replicate TfL type structures, powers and financing across the country, that's going to be a very big bill. So it's actually good to highlight some of the kind of challenges with TfL. However, wrapping up all the kind of challenges with London, it's great to see all of the different things that are being done to make London an even more enjoyable place to live. One of the things I'm very conscious of, as someone who used to live in London for a while and used to work down there, is it's perennially overheating. And actually, in my view, the best way to ensure that London is livable and is an enjoyable place to work and live in is actually to invest in the north. Because if you invest in the north and you can grow our economy here, that helps take a lot of the pressure off London. So my argument would be the most pro-London approach is actually to give us a greater opportunity to grow ourselves in the north. So I leave those as some kind of my initial thoughts. And if Andy or Alice wants to